Welcome back. You're still watching Politics Tonight, digging beyond the headlines. And now to our interview with the guest of the day. I am joined by the former lawmaker representing Kaduna Central Senator District in the 8th Senate, Senator Sani. Tonight we're discussing how to address the inevitable pains of subsidy removal. Senator Sani is an author, Pan-Africanist and human rights crusader. Thank you very much for joining us, Senator.
Thank you for having me.
Right. So before we get into the crux of our discussion tonight, let's talk about you for a minute. You're today a member of the PDP, and many people didn't expect you to switch to PDP. Why did you?
I beg your pardon, what did you say?
You're today a member of the PDP. Many people didn't expect you to switch to PDP. Why did you switch?
Well, first of all, every politician you see is a product of an equation that happened within his own local constituency. I was a founding member of the APC in Kaduna State, and it so happened that within the period I was a member and I served at the National Assembly, my own principles and conviction couldn't tally with the person who was the state governor at that very time. And he made it impossible for many of us who were in that party to be members and to continue to be members. So when you say the party structure is in the hands of a governor and the governor is the leader of the party, does not mean that that governor should dictate to whoever is in that party and everyone becomes his slave. So for that, as a man of conscience and conviction, I'm not in politics for the sake of being in power or contesting election. I'm in politics because I have principles, I have ideals, and I'm also a man with an ideology. So if we cannot live in the same roof, I simply have to give away. He, at that very time, when he was in power, he thinks that everyone should simply bow to him, kowtow to whatever he wants to. We did everything possible to tell him that this is a political party. We all came together to form, and we all have our own equal rights. But they don't want people who are competent and capable. They want loyalists, they want lackeys, they want stooges. To bow down to them. I can't be part of that. So for that, I decided to leave the party and then join another party. That was all I did. And I didn't join PDP directly. We went to PRP, People's Redemption Party, which was the party that was rooted in the heritage of our parents, of our history, of our culture. I was there. But when Balarabe Musa was there was crisis in the party, and it became impossible for us to evict the APC out of power. So we decided that let us all join hands together, all the opposition party. Some of us from the PRP joined together with those in the PDP, and then the election came along, and that was it. So I couldn't find myself living under a party with someone who is not a Democrat. I can't do that, so that's why I left.
All right. So would you say your switch was ideological or emotional?
Well, there are a lot of differences we had. And I think the person who was the governor of that time came from a different background from I am. I come from the leftist, socialist, Marxist-Leninist political culture, and he came from the right. And we can find ourselves ideologically from that perspective. And also on the second term is that I have been in the struggle as a civil rights activist. And he was someone who was simply known from 1999 when he was brought in to serve the federal government. So we come from different backgrounds, and we operated at different frequency. Even though the APC gave us a platform, and the APC was a merger. People come from different political tendencies, background, and inclination to form the APC. But we know very well that later, many crises erupted from different states. We had it in Kano, It's in Kaduna and other states. And then we couldn't stay together, so I have to leave. So that is simply what happened. I wasn't a founding member of the PDP, but for the fact that we needed a coalition, we needed a united front to dislodge the APC out of Kaduna State. And that is why I found myself in the PDP.
All right, so another thing I would like to know is, what is your plan politically? Do you see yourself back in APC or returning to the Senate through your current party?
As far as politics is concerned, you can't predict what will happen the next day. But for the fact that when we move, we hope to achieve a certain goal. And it's not only me. The person who contested the presidential, the governorship candidate of the PDP in Kaduna State is also from APC. And many of those who contested the Senate and the House of Reps seats in the PDP were also from the APC. So you can see how APC lost some of his good people to the PDP in that state. And that was the reason why the 2023 elections came with a different result. The APC was dominant for 8 years, but when the 2023 election came, they lost the 3 senatorial seats to the PDP. Out of 16 members of House of Reps, the PDP won 10. And you can see the presidential election also. The PDP won in Kaduna State, all because many of those who should have provided and gave votes to the APC were driven out because of the high-handedness and tyranny of the governor of Kaduna State that time. We have always reminded him that power is temporary, it's ephemeral, it's transient, and you can see the situation now. After 8 years, he's out, and then the PDP won Kaduna State. And I believe that it's the biggest failure of a governor for you not to win presidential, to provide votes for your presidential candidate. And I know that APC could have beat its chest very well in Kaduna State if they have won the presidential election, but it shows who is on the ground. We won the presidential election in PDP. We also won the senatorial elections and 10 seats out of 16. And it's all the undoing of the APC in that state. So as far as I'm concerned, nobody knows what will happen tomorrow. But for me, I believe that getting out of that party was the best thing we had to do at that very time.
All right, I get that. But Senator, if Asiwaju Tinubu invites you to return to your old party, or, ask you to work for your nation through his government, will you agree?
Well, first of all, my relationship with Asiwaju didn't started with the PDP or the APC. It was rooted in the struggle for June 12th. I think the first time I met him was in the house of Chief M.K. Abiola during the struggle for the revalidation of June 12, 1993 election. And the second time was when I came out of prison after Babangida jailed us for calling for the removal of his government while I was the vice chairman of Campaign for Democracy and Beko was the chairman of Campaign for Democracy. And in 1999, I joined the Alliance for Democracy and I contested the Senate in 2003. And I lost, and he provided support for me at that very time. But Kaduna could not, we couldn't make much headway under the AD. And then we came together under APC, from AC and then to APC. And for now, I believe we had a personal relationship and history. And I always respect him for that. But the issue of calling me to come and serve in his government does not come in. I think there are other better persons, better than me, who can do a lot of good for our country. And for me, I believe that even from my own very house, I can make my own contribution. And I believe that he has started on a good note, and there are many things he has done. But there are also tragic mistakes, which they have to be very careful. If not, it can erupt into a crisis. I am one of those who believe that he is actually a president of Nigeria and that we should all, as citizens, recognize him as a president for now, even though our party and other people are in court, does not mean that because you are in court, you shouldn't recognize. This is a sovereign country. An election was conducted, and a man is announced to be a winner. He's the president until the court announces otherwise. And then whatever contribution we can make for the progress of the country, we have to do it as patriot and as nationalist. So that is my own way. As for coming back to APC, well, it depends on what we decide as far as Kaduna State is concerned. The man who has led to our exit from the APC is out in Kaduna State, and whatever we decided from that state level is the decision which we are going to take. So it's not for me, but for me, I know very well that with such kind of person, we can never stay in the same roof. We simply don't share anything in common with him.
All right, thank you very much, Senator. Now let's get to our core discussion for tonight. As a country, we're battling with the pains of petrol subsidy removal. But as a former lawmaker, what role do you think the National Assembly can play in this?
Well, first of all, the issue of petroleum subsidy has been with us for almost 4 to 5 decades. Government after government, there was attempts were made to remove that subsidy, and out of the fear of revolt, protest, and dissent from the public, government after government, they found it difficult to remove that subsidy. I have been an advocate of subsidy for decades. We have led protests, we have joined protests in defense of petroleum subsidy. But at a certain time, we have to tell ourselves the home truth. We have been paying subsidy in millions, then in billions, then in hundreds of millions, then in trillions, then to the point that our government is borrowing to pay subsidy. Then we came back and say, hey, let's look at these things from another perspective. Who are the beneficiaries of this subsidy? And why, as an oil-producing country, can't we produce PMS to serve our people? Can't we have an alternative way of providing the necessary energy, fossil fuels to our people without parting away with trillions of naira to rent-seeking middlemen who are simply importing petroleum? And the idea came, and we reasoned from that perspective. Now, it is a fact that subsidy has been removed, but it has not been removed. It's the last government that simply made no provision for it for the second half of the year. Now, this government has inherited no funds to pay subsidy. Then what they could have done, first of all, is to sit down and say that we are heading to the consequences of absence of subsidy. And we must come out with a Marshall Plan, a master plan on how to tackle the consequences of this. Certainly, if you remove subsidy, it's going to reflect on cost of living, it's going to reflect on everything from tuition fees to rent, to public transportation, and to so many things. So that was not thought of. So the idea, it appears that when subsidy was removed, is then now what can we do to ameliorate the problem, to reduce the hardships and suffering faced by people? Then the idea of 8,000 came, and then we condemn it in totality. Because in a nation where people can't even survive with 30,000 naira minimum wage, talk less of 8,000. What the National Assembly can do, first of all, is to support the idea of removing subsidy, but to ensure the full implementation of making sure that the funds that were allocated for subsidy goes to the people, to the masses, to the downtrodden on the ground. And even before the approval of that 500 billion, there are a number of questions the National Assembly is supposed to ask. First of all, who is going to be in charge of 500 billion? And then how did the government derive this figure? And how will this money be distributed to the states? And from who is going to be in charge, and which structure will that be used? Because if you have 500 billion naira, and then you say you distribute it to states, all states are not equal. There are some states that will use the money sent to them to pay the contractors they are owing, to pay the backlog of salaries and arrears and pensions, or to also fund some infrastructure project and use a fraction of it to pay people as a subsidy, as palliative. So to me, the National Assembly should perform oversight function on how this 500 billion naira will be disbursed. This is to avoid the disaster or the tragedy that has happened with the humanitarian ministry as far as distribution of N-Power, trade-up money, and all these jargons that happened under Buhari administration. So to me, this time around, there must be probity, there must be transparency, there must be accountability, and there must be order and structure in how this money can go to the downtrodden in our society. Most times, if you give it to governors, well, they are the ones who are in charge of their state. But there must be a structure that will ensure that no kobo of this subsidy is diverted to payment of backlog of salaries and pension, or to pay contractors, or to fund some projects that have nothing to do with palliatives. So this is very important. And National Assembly is the only structure of government that can do that for now.
All right, Senator. So based on all you just said, are you on the side of those who say palliatives should have been provided before removal of subsidy? And would you say the gains, the pains outweigh the gains?
Well, first of all, it is a courageous act for a government to decide to look at 220 million people and say we are going to pull this subsidy and face the consequences of it. Nigerians are suffering, and what we need now is to make sure that sacrifices is not only directed at the poor people, but those at the upper strata of society, the bourgeoisie class, also make sacrifices. And that if you continue to call on the poor to make sacrifices, then that is unjust and unfair. I am now fully in support of the removal of subsidy. But I want to know how this issue can be addressed in terms of making sure that palliatives goes to the ground. By now, before the removal, government ought to have purchased number of vehicles and distribute to states, or the state government purchase it, and making sure that transportation is eased by virtue of buses and taxis that are provided for people. And the long-term aspect of it is supporting small businesses, also supporting farmers. Palliatives cannot address the problems of poverty in this country. Poverty has been deeply entrenched in the last 8 to 10 years. According to the statistics which we have had last year, 133 million Nigerians are in deeper poverty. And as such, sharing 8,000 to them will never address it. I don't know how even they come with that figure. That clearly shows the disconnect between those in the position of authority, power, comfort, and privilege with people on the ground to think that 8,000 can solve the problem. But I'm glad that the government now has seen the wisdom in reversing that thinking. Now there should be a step-by-step implementation. First is the short-term measure, increase the wages of public servants, and then support small businesses, support farmers, make transport available to people, and making sure that other means of transportation that is controlled by the government is also made affordable, like the train service is also affordable by poor people. So the difference between the hardship we are facing now and the hardships we have been facing under Buhari administration is that we live a life of falsehood and deception under Buhari because we borrow money to pay subsidy. It's like borrowing to eat. You will keep borrowing and be eating. There will be a time nobody is going to borrow you money to go and eat. So we can't continue that. The pains under Buhari is that of the pain of cancer. And now the pain we are facing now is the pain of chemotherapy to address the problem. And we hope that this hardship has a time limit. People are ready to make sacrifices, but there should be a time to which we will see that these hardships and sacrifices is coming to an end. It cannot be eternal. We can't continue to make sacrifices. And one thing is that if people see the government also making sure that those at the upper strata of society are also making sacrifices and are also being made to pay for the mistakes, the wrongs, and the tragedy of the past, people will be much comfortable. For example, if the president now initiated a process of recovering looted money under Buhari administration, people will say, now we are talking. But if those who were part of that government are simply left off the hook, and it's the masses that are paying for the prices of reform, then it's not going to be fair. As it is now, it's as if masses have inherited suffering from that government, and those who were in a comfortable position under government have also inherited comfort and privilege. So let the people, the masses, the downtrodden, see clearly that they are not the only ones making sacrifices, and then we will now make progress. Government can achieve a lot if they ensure that the plans for this subsidy removal is well implemented. If the money that should go to subsidy is now going to the people, is going to infrastructure, is going to health, is going to education, is going to agriculture, and people can see it, is that transferring money from waste to something that people can see visibly. So that is the best way to go for now.